politicians just ran up the largest deficit since the Great Recession, $215 billion just last month.
Help me! I can't stop spending!
We'll go one-on-one with Senator Marco Rubio, and we'll show you how plans to cut red tape failed in the legislature.
It's absolute pure insanity. It's indefensible.
Vanessa Ruffes breaks down the new law to help bullied kids change schools. And in the race for governor, it's Republican frontrunner Adam Putnam's turn in our hot seat. This is Money, Power, and Politics. We're going to start by taking a closer look at how politicians on both sides speak and why you cannot always trust what they say. We're going to focus tonight on a play called turning the table, or the table maneuver, because they sometimes tip their hands by saying the word table when they do it.
Florida will be taken off the table.
It's off the table?
Now, first, let's go back in time. Governor Scott once told me that expanding health care for the poor was on the table, forgetting that he had already taken it off the table that very same day. How and why did you change your mind on that?
Oh, I didn't change my mind at all. We'll be looking at that over the next few weeks.
Yeah, I don't remember saying a few weeks. I don't think that's what I said.
He also promised so many jobs on top of the jobs we'd get through normal growth anyway.
It'll be the 700,000, plus what would be normal.
It's on top of that. On top of what normal growth would be.
And then he took the second part of his promise off the table and hoped we wouldn't notice.
I don't know who said that.
700,000 on top of.
No.
He took expanding Medicaid off the table.
We're not going to implement that. We just can't afford it.
Then as he geared up for re-election, he put it back on the table.
Expanding access to Medicaid services for 3 years is a compassionate, common sense step forward.
Then after he won, he said he wouldn't put it on the table, but he wouldn't stop the legislature from putting it on the table.
Are you going to push for Medicaid expansion in some form or another?
I'm not going to stand in the way. That's what I've said.
And then when his fellow Republicans in the legislature actually tried to put it on the table, he promptly knocked it off the table.
Which one are we going to take over next? Social Security, Medicare? We can't afford it.
It's a common maneuver, and both parties do it.
That's a red line for us.
I didn't set a red line.
In fact, former President Obama did it quite a bit.
If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor, period.
They're going to have to make some choices, and they might end up having to switch doctors.
I bring this up now because the Trump administration appears to now be turning the table or running the old table maneuver on Florida over oil drilling.
Florida will be taken off the table.
And so for Floridians, we are not drilling off the coast of Florida.
Well, Floridians overwhelmingly oppose offshore drilling because we launch space rockets and don't want boosters crashing into oil rigs. And we don't want rigs interfering with our military training missions in the Eastern Gulf. And because we have more beaches than any other state, so we are far more dependent on beach tourism. And as we saw from the Deepwater Horizon disaster, a spill would crush jobs. Well, first, President Trump said he wants to expand offshore drilling across much of the country, including the state of Florida. And then Florida Democrats and Republicans in the nation's largest swing state erupted. Then the president sent his Secretary of the Interior, Ryan Zinke, to Florida to tell us he'll give us a pass. Or, as he and the governor put it,
Florida will be taken off the table.
It's off the table?
But another politically important state said, wait a minute, what about us?
You took Florida off, and I'm suggesting I hope you do the same for Maine.
And the Trump administration said no decisions have in fact been made about oil drilling in Florida yet.
So I put Florida on, but Florida is still in the process.
So despite what they said in January, the fight over drilling off the Florida coast is a long way from finished, and the back and forth is just part of a long-running routine.
Everything's on the table.
Florida will be taken off the table.
It's on the table.
It's off the table?
There's no deal to protect Florida from drilling.
In just a couple of minutes, we're going to take a look at the doublespeak in Congress and the soaring debt and the continuing efforts to change our gun laws. But first, we're going to key into the new gun and safety law right here in Florida with Adam Putnam, Republican frontrunner in the race for governor. Putnam turned some heads last year by calling himself a proud NRA sellout. So that's where we're going to start the conversation. Well, Commissioner Putnam, thank you for joining us.
It's an honor to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
So you called yourself a proud NRA sellout. What did you mean by that in your ads, and do you regret calling yourself a sellout to the gun lobby?
Well, look, I grew up hunting, shooting, collecting firearms. I had bought, sold, and traded shotguns and long guns well before I was 21. And so that is a part of my heritage, my character, my values growing up in Bartow. I share those experiences with my children, and frankly, I believe that there are millions of law-abiding citizens in this country, millions even here in Florida, who understand and respect and handle firearms safely. They should never be confused with the monster who killed 17 children at Parkland High School.
I'm confused by the use of the term sellout. Had you said you're a proud NRA supporter, I would get that. A sellout means either a traitor or, more commonly, someone who compromises his or her own convictions for personal gain. Use of the term sellout, did you mean that?
Look, as I said, it is so important for people not to confuse those who are proud firearms owners, proud Second Amendment advocates, proud shooters, proud hunters, proud collectors, with the monster who perpetrated this terrible act at Parkland High School.
I get all of that, but I'm still stuck on the word sellout. A sellout, meaning giving of one's beliefs for personal ambition or gain. Do you still embrace the term sellout?
I embrace our rights to safely and responsibly exercise the Second Amendment.
You oppose raising the age limit from 18 to 21 for long guns. Do you think that the governor violated the Second Amendment by signing the school safety law?
I believe that Governor Scott has handled the aftermath of this shooting very well. I believe that we need to harden our schools. We need to create a safe learning environment. We need to have controlled access, and we need to have more school resource officers. I have said that I disagree with the longer waiting period and with raising the age.
So if you were governor last week instead of Rick Scott, would you have signed that law or vetoed it?
I would have worked with the legislature to put greater emphasis on reforming our Baker Act, closing mental health loopholes that allow those who are disturbed, those who post videos of themselves cutting themselves, those who advertise on YouTube and state on YouTube that they intend to become a professional school shooter, more resources for school resource officers, and I would not have supported for all of those law-abiding adults raising the long gun age from 18 to 21.
So if the legislature delivered the legislation that it did to your desk, would you sign it or veto it?
I would have worked with them to harden our schools and close those mental health loopholes. As I have said, I oppose the longer wait, which would not have altered anything about this situation. In fact, Governor Scott was also opposed to that.
So you would not have signed that into law?
And I oppose raising it from 18 to 21.
So you would not have signed that into law?
Likely not, because I oppose raising it from 18 to 21. I don't believe that that's the right approach.
When you were in Washington, the debt was around $6 trillion, shot up to $14 trillion by the time you left, then shot up well more than that after you left. Looking back in hindsight, are there any votes you cast to increase spending that you now regret, whether it be the war in Iraq, an expansion of Medicare, et cetera?
Well, when I went to Washington, it was just before 9/11, and the whole world changed on 9/11. Given what we knew at the time, how we had to respond, how we had to ramp up Homeland Security, completely changed the way that we approached airport security. None of us wanted to put America at risk of having another 9/11 situation.
But in hindsight, you support, still in hindsight, every vote you cast to increase spending.
Well, I wish we all had the benefit of hindsight in life,
I'm going to give you that benefit.
Don't.
That's right. I'm going to give you that benefit. Looking back, woulda, coulda, shoulda, knowing what you now know.
Life doesn't work in woulda, coulda, shouldas. There are clearly times when I was forced to vote on packages after 2006, when Nancy Pelosi would bundle funding for our troops with a whole bunch of other extraneous matters, that I wish I could have separated those out and voted for funding for our troops and not voted for some of the San Francisco ideas that she had. But we didn't have that luxury. You got one vote, and I was never going to vote against supporting our troops who were in the field defending us.
In the current state budget, are we spending enough on K through 12 public education, or are we shortchanging it?
Well, I was pleased to see that the legislature increased on average per pupil funding by just over $100 this year. I'm a product of our public schools.
You mentioned per student funding. It's still not where it was in 07, 08 when you adjust for inflation. Should it be?
Well, you obviously have to work your way back up to that. Money is not the only driver. If it was, then some of the high tax, high spending states that keep sending us their talent, who move to Florida every day at the rate of 1,000 new people per day, they spend more per pupil than we do, and their outcomes are not necessarily better than Florida's. Florida has done a very good job closing the achievement gap, lifting the achievement levels, particularly of minority students, but there's more to be done.
Commissioner Putnam, thank you for your time.
You bet. Thank you.
Watch more with Adam Putnam and the other candidates in the race on our YouTube channel. Search for Craig Patrick's Money, Power, and Politics and click subscribe. You'll also find our investigations of questionable spending and red tape in government, which brings us to the story of Heather Del Castillo. She's a former health coach who got fined and threatened with jail because she was encouraging people to exercise and buy fresh food without a state license. Was it the diet police or the grocery police?
I don't really know.
Your tax dollars at work.
Cracking down on people who give advice of what to buy at the grocery store.
That's right. Even despite the fact that the state effectively recognizes that what Heather does is safe. She'd be allowed to do it for free. It doesn't matter that she's doing it in exchange for compensation. She's speaking about a topic that is a part of the public discourse. People have been talking about diet and nutrition for as long as people have been eating.
Well, House Speaker Richard Corcoran said it is another example of how Florida overregulates people out of business, and he said it needs to stop.
It's absolute pure insanity.
Well, the legislature had a bill to take down the regulations that took down Heather's business, but it failed.
And it has to be fixed, and I apologize to that young lady and her husband who serves our country.
Meanwhile, the rest of the nation is beginning to figure out why the students in Parkland are so engaged and effective in driving change. They were taught civics and government starting in middle school in what has become the most successful student civics program in the nation. See, Florida trains teachers and develops their material through the Joint Center for Citizenship. But after we've seen the results, including test scores and civics that have shot up the chart, last year state lawmakers cut all funding for civics education through the Joint Center. And this year they stiffed it yet again. Former Governor and Senator Bob Graham, who helped create the Joint Center, gives us his thoughts now on why.
There is, unfortunately, a core of people in politics who think it's not to their advantage to have the public very well informed. If more people became engaged, maybe there'd be more opponents running against them when they ran for re-election.
Well, on that note, we're taking a closer look at the upcoming elections. Plus, coming up in our spotlight, Vanessa Ruffes examines the new law that gives bullied students state money, public money, to switch schools. Tallahassee Mayor Andrew Gilliam is highlighting his fight with the NRA as he campaigns for governor. So tonight, we're taking a closer look at his claim that he beat the gun lobby.
In case you haven't heard, I was sued for over 2 years by the gun lobby, the NRA and their pals.
On his video and tweets, Gilliam boasts of beating the gun lobby because his city has an ordinance that bans people from shooting guns in parks. The gun lobby sued, and courts rejected their suit. That's why Gilliam is claiming he won and they lost.
But I got good news. We beat them in the circuit court.
But there's something Gilliam is leaving out that may take some of the shine off his claim of victory. Courts rejected the suit on grounds that his ordinance is null and void, effectively ruling that Gilliam's ordinance cannot be enforced because it conflicts with state law.
Well, Gilliam's campaign told us that Republicans in the gun lobby can revise history and downplay Gilliam's victory all they want. The NRA backed the case. Gilliam stood up to them, and they lost. As governor, Gilliam will build on that victory by passing more common sense gun laws to protect our communities. That coming tonight from the Gilliam campaign. We're also taking a closer look tonight at the new law, which gives bullied students scholarships to transfer to a different public or private school. Vanessa Ruffes has tonight's spotlight.
She just glared at me from the fence.
Abigail Taylor looks on at her school campus.
All the way down to the 8th grade, stairwell.
Burnett Middle won't be her home for much longer.
I'm still like scared if like she's gonna probably do something again.
But she says perhaps that's a blessing.
It actually really hurts to like feel as if that one person, like, in a way, just hates you and doesn't want to be like close or anything like that to you, and them hurting you nor calling you names.
For the 14-year-old, that name-calling recently escalated to physical fighting with broken glasses and a doctor's visit. Abby's grandmother, Cynthia Dowell, says it often feels like they have very few options.
Having to take her to the hospital, having to have her neck x-rayed, having her sprained, sprained neck, sprained back, her hips were sore, 4 or 5 days, and she's going back to school, and the bully's already back there again, and the kids are already starting again, and she hasn't even healed yet. It's not a comfortable feeling.
Dowell says while she'd like to see more done to punish bullies, Abby might benefit best from a change in scenery. The Hope Scholarship might give her that chance. It will pay to transfer victims of bullying to another public or private school.
Will this bill make a
With the governor's signature earlier this month, the new law will be in place when the new school year begins this fall.
I think the concept and where
Representative Manny Diaz of Hialeah is the bill's author.
My background is in education. I was a classroom teacher and a school site administrator, and so I've firsthand witnessed bullying and what it can do in schools, and seen frustrated parents with limitations because of their zip code or because of their financial situation not be able to make other decisions for their child.
But not everyone is on board. Representative Chevron Jones of West Park gave us this statement, saying the Hope Scholarship is yet another voucher system which will siphon millions of dollars from public schools. Jones says the private schools receiving public funds aren't required to be accredited or have a bullying prevention policy.
I'm hoping that this goes just for the Hope Scholarship.
Dowell says having Abby leave her school wouldn't have been her first choice. In fact, she says it's like putting a Band-Aid on the problem. But until policies change on how the bullies themselves are addressed, it's a solution many victims will have to take.
She doesn't need the drama from this stuff. She needs to work on math and reading and writing and science, and she wants to be a vet. She needs to focus on the things she wants to do. Not fight.
You don't really know when it's gonna stop because it goes on and on and on.
Now, Representative Diaz says they're expecting to spend $40 million on Hope Scholarships in the coming year, and that is based on the latest numbers of bullying cases as well as current state scholarships.
$40 million. Where is that $40 million coming from?
Well, it's coming from tax credits. So when folks buy a car, they will have the option to donate $105 of that purchase in exchange for a tax credit. Of course, instead of that $105 going into state coffers for other uses, it's going to go to these scholarships.
And how do state lawmakers define bullying? What qualifies? What types of instances are we talking about?
It's a wide range. So anything from fighting to sexual harassment, threats, hazing. In fact, if you took all the reported cases of each of these qualifying incidents, there would be more than 44,000 potential Hope Scholars across the state during the 2015-2016 school year.
Good insight, Vanessa. Thank you. Coming up, we're going to dig into plans in Congress to prevent mass shootings, one-on-one with Senator Rubio. Well, Senator Rubio, thank you for joining us. I want to start with your proposal to improve the background check system so that federal government cooperates more with state law enforcement, let state law enforcement know when someone fails a background check. Who would possibly oppose this if this came up for a vote?
Well, that's one of the reasons, that's one of the reasons why we're addressing it first, is because it's something that should pass quickly. No one should oppose it. It's common sense, has broad bipartisan support. Senator Nelson and I are working together on it. And all it basically says is people that are prohibited from buying guns, like someone that's been convicted of multiple misdemeanors, someone who's been adjudicated mentally ill, someone who's a felon, they try to go in and buy a gun, they fail the background check. Someone should tell local police about that.
The president is also already running for re-election. Are you prepared at this point to endorse his candidacy for a second term?
Sure, of course. And I think the president will be re-elected.
Should Romney or should Kasich or anybody else in the Republican Party run for president in 2020, you are at this point endorsing President Trump?
Yeah, I do not believe the president will have a serious primary challenger, and I don't anticipate that being the case, and I don't think that should be the case. By and large, I have differences with the president, and when I have them, I tell him what those differences are, and I tell you what they are. That said, I also think we need to give the White House credit for the things they have been able to achieve. We have a historic tax bill passed that wasn't perfect. There are things I would have done differently, but you see the economy growing now. Regulatory reform, the retreat of ISIS has lost almost all of its operational space in the Middle East. There are some issues regarding that I have some differences with them on. But I also think we need to be fair about what's been achieved in the first 14 months of this presidency.
Senator Rubio, thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Coming up in 2 weeks, Money, Power, and Politics is moving from Sunday night. See where you can see it starting next month and what we're changing. Beginning April 1st, we're going to go to an hour-long 11 p.m. newscast on Sunday nights. Money, Power, Politics with this is not going away. Our segments will shift into our Fox 13 newscast. And I'm working on some other specials you'll be hearing much more about soon, including our upcoming Democratic gubernatorial debate. Of course, you can still keep watching Money, Power, and Politics online. We'll see you next week for a roundup of investigations in Money, Power, and Politics.